Welcome to Mindfulness Unscripted. I'm your host, Jon Orsini. Take a big breath in. Here we go.
I called my husband. I said, "You got to see this rainbow. I told you." I told her she was going into the sky, and then she was. And he's like, "You're not going to believe it. She was in my dream last night, and she said that she was going to show up as a rainbow." And I'm like, "Whoa!" Like just the connection to just nature, which is something that's so important to me and to her, of course, and to know that our loved ones, if you believe in nature and if you pay attention to nature and its magic, it's just such a indicator that they are there. Oh my gosh. And they show up in the most beautiful ways.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you for sharing that because,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I will very candidly admit, ask me on the day, ask me in 15 minutes from now. I strongly vacillate between, my brain's probably just searching for meaning and meaninglessness and chaos, and then having these experiences that are undeniable. And it's weird because even as the experiences accumulate, again, not least of which is through the altered state of consciousness that the type of breathwork I can induce. And then, like you're saying, just these messages that come when we're receptive and open, especially when in the context of nature. So you mentioned the rainbows and that feeling of the difference between when you think of someone, right? Or say like, oh, that's what that's what my grandpa would say in this situation. It gives you kind of like a warm feeling, like that's what my grandpa would say in this situation. Awesome. Versus, oh, my grandpa's here with me right now. I can feel his presence, right? That those are two different, both beautiful, but also different experiences. And so, like you're mentioning, it's almost like they're there sometimes. And then the rainbow is so vivid coming to us in dreams in an altered state. And there are some things that are just, they're just undeniable. And yet still, I find my brain just vacillates between like, yeah, whatever, like I don't know what that is. Like I wish it would always just stay in this place where I'm captured by the wonder and the mystery, and because it's so, again, I'll just say it one more time, undeniable. So this is a really special thing.
It is. It's magical. And it's like it comes through different ways, right? It could be like it was so obvious, a huge rainbow in front of my eyes. I couldn't deny it. Or just like you said, a feeling,
Yeah.
or possibly our senses as the human like needs to see it or
Yeah.
feel it or sometimes smell it or have a nostalgia about things. But
Mhm.
it's undeniable. I think that's the one thing that's across the board.
Yeah. The one other thing I'll say about it before we get into the next stuff, which I'm very excited about, is it makes me think of, there's this clip that I've seen flow through my social media algorithm of Rainn Wilson, the actor who played Dwight on The Office. And
Yes.
he's on a podcast and he says something like really intense about how somebody told him one time, don't give in, don't let them win. And it's essentially like, don't let cynicism take you over. Keep your heart open, keep the wonder. I don't even know why that makes me emotional, but it's like, I'll just admittedly, like, cynicism just gets to me sometimes. And I wish it wouldn't. And I just wonder that if part of getting older sometimes is just getting, I don't know, sad and tired and cynical at times. And, and again, especially just coming all the way full circle back to holidays, how as a kid they might have a context, you hope, obviously everybody's got different experiences, but there's a context, hopefully, of some kind of joy around the holidays. And then when you lose people you love and the things accumulate, it's like, oh, this is complicated. But maybe the whole trick about getting older is how do you maintain hopefulness and an open heart amidst everything? And that's like where the magic is.
Such magic, so beautiful. I love
Yeah.
when the emotions come up too, it makes it so real, right? And
Yeah.
yes, I love his clips. I see him a lot, and I had no idea like how profound the type of work he's doing.
Yeah.
And then also, yeah, I think I quoted something very similar to someone the other day, and I was like, "Do not let life make your heart harder. Like allow life to soften the heart. Like do not." I said all the poets, all of the philosophers, they will all tell you, do not let life harden you. Allow it to soften you instead. And that's where the profound, again, magic comes, I think.
Beautiful. And I gotta say this in honor of my girlfriend this morning. I was talking to her this morning, and I said, what we're talking about made me think of this quote. It's George Bernard Shaw, who's this great American or great British playwright, and he said, "We don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing." So not a direct correlation, but definitely similar in essence, right? Like just keep playing, keep the heart
Keep it
open.
light. Don't
Yeah.
get heavy. Yeah, keep it light.
Yeah,
Very appropriate
curiosity.
for these times.
Curiosity and wonder. So, okay, without further ado, I'm very excited because I love hearing about astrology because I know so little about it, but I'm always grateful to be around people like yourself at Kripalu because I'll notice, for instance, when I was driving back from Kripalu last night, saw this beautiful moon coming. I'm like, oh, it's almost a full moon. It's just a beautiful moon shining over like the freshly icing over lakes on my drive back down Route 8 and just so beautiful. And then I also want to talk about Ayurveda because you know so much. You're such a wealth of information about Ayurveda. Another thing I love hearing about. I pick up pieces here and there, but I know so little about, and it's so love to get in. So take your pick. Astrology, Ayurveda, or how do you want to blend them? Just
Sure, I'll blend them. Why not? It's interesting. Astrology's always been close to my heart. In sixth grade, we were asked to like do a project on anything in the world that we wanted to do. Some people did it on bubblegum. Some people did it on sports. I did it on astrology. So this has been something since sixth grade. It's always fascinated me. It's been a part of, I think, my soul. It's part of um, it's also my lineage, of being South Asian, being Indian, and these things are part of our lives. It's part of the Vedas, the Vedic astrology. It's part of the Vedic text, which is part of yoga, which is part of Ayurveda. It's all almost like somewhat like user manuals of like, hey, you're here as the soul, you're here as this human, like follow this wisdom that we've compiled and put it into, texts for you. And so much of Ayurveda too is I say if you believe in Ayurveda, if you're hip to Ayurveda, Ayurveda is the study of life. It's the wisdom of life. It's also a reminder that we're nature, right? That life is nature. Nature prevails over all. And if we believe in nature, like the trees and the earth and the sun and all of that, we got to believe in the cosmos too. That is part of it. The luminaries, which is the sun and the moon, those are the obvious ones, which we live in circadian rhythm with the sun as the sun rises and falls. We all know about that. Even Western medicine says that, living in circadian rhythm is very healthy. I think there was a Nobel Prize about how living in circadian rhythm is you can rid like 75% of disease through doing that or something along those lines.
wow.
And we're always aware of the moon, right? How can we not be when it's shining on the snow? I was shining in my room last night. I couldn't even sleep. It was so bold and beautiful. And along with that, those are the luminaries, there's the planets, and the energy and the shifts of all of that. And for me, it's been very profound when life doesn't make sense, when the things that I'm doing with my mind and my body are not making sense or things are happening and I don't know why. And it's always been a place of solace for me to go to astrology to say, well, what's happening in the planets? That's why. And it's undeniable,
Yeah.
because it is nature as well.
I've got that is so vivid, and I never quite thought of it that way. So this thought is very prematurely forming in my brain, but I'm gonna start saying it out. It's really interesting about how, for instance, when you go outside and say there's a cold wind moving in, you can't see air or like you can't see wind. You could see it in the context of what it's doing to the branches or the leaves or something, right? So you might, like, of course, you could see it in the sense of how it's affecting things, but the wind literally itself, you can't see it, right? But that doesn't mean you go outside and say, well, I can't see it, so obviously I don't need a jacket. It's like, if something's happening and I'm cold, you know what I mean? Like I can feel something and I'm cold. So I wonder how it's just so interesting to think of the cosmos as nature, as an extension of nature. Duh, right? Like just because it's outside our atmosphere doesn't all of a sudden mean it's not nature, that it's somehow not real, I say in quotes. And so that's so interesting how, however, the planets might move, or how, for instance, the moon, I think about this one all the time, how the moon affects tides. It's probably such astrology 101, but I'm even before 101, I know like so little about it. But I always think, okay, well, if the moon affects tides, and if our bodies are mostly water, right, the moon affects how water moves on the planet, and we are mostly water. So how would it not affect us in some form or fashion? just because we can't see what the moon is doing energetically speaking, it's affecting water and we can see that. Just like we could see the wind is affecting the leaves and the branches, even though we can't see the wind itself. So why wouldn't this just pragmatically make sense that astrology is doing something?
Exactly. I think that's the best way to like start someone to understand astrology is look at the moon because everyone is aware of that, right? They're like,
Mm.
yes, there's like childbirth, the waves change, so much happens because of the movement of water. So that's a great place to like kind of make it the awareness, right? And then you can take it further and further from there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you're talking about wind and I would say the elements, right, of nature, because that is what Ayurveda is based on, and understanding that there's subtleties. The sun is very obvious. The sun is hot. It's the fire element, but then the wind is subtle, but it's still there. And so much of what Ayurveda comes from Samkhya philosophy. We won't get too deep into that, but it starts with the subtleties. It starts with, having we say Purusha and Prakriti, which is like just the awareness, and then the formulation of the awareness. It's like the I, and then the I am. It's like I alone, but then add the am, create something, and it's so subtle. And then it goes into the subtleties of essentially the mind. It's like you can't see the mind, but it's there. And certain elements you can't see them, like you named wind and also ether. You can't touch it, you can't hold it, but you know what it feels like when it touches you. And Ayurveda deeply describes that as one of the elements that we call as air and ether. Those are one of the five major elements. The five elements are fire, water, air, ether, and earth. So they're very much there, and they're very much a part of us, and they very much affect us as well.
I love that. And the idea that it gives a conceptual framework. I had a conversation, Colin, who does Queer
Yes.
Cosmos.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love
So
mine when it comes to astrology.
yeah, I love Colin. He was my very first podcast guest that I had on here. And, but one thing we talked about, and now I'm being reminded of it, is this idea of, it gives a conceptual framework. And something that you're saying is this idea of building off of, um, that things happen in a certain flow at a certain time. There's that song, "To Everything There's a Season," right?
Mhm.
And so it's the idea of, it's almost like it's, in this case, using that languaging to you're naming the season you're in and just honoring the energy of that, because there may be a time for more communication, more friendship, connections, more of that. And then there may be a time for just hibernation, isolation, solitude, thinking, reflection, and just honoring the season that you're in, and maybe understanding it feels like, from what you're saying, it sounds like, so definitely, like, correct me if I'm wrong or shift me around if it's not making, it doesn't align with that, but it feels like that sense of, oh, if we could kind of name the season we're in, we could honor that energy, knowing that another season will come and it'll be time to honor a different energy.
Exactly. Yeah, work with it, allow it to support you rather than work against it. Because anytime you work against something, it doesn't feel good and you're not in the flow of it. And of course, you're going to mention Colin, who is a Gemini himself. So shout out to Colin, who's a Gemini. It's also represents twin energy. So, and he happens to be a twin. I mean, look at that. It's
That's
so kismet for him, but he has a twin, I think, sister. But it's also duality and partnership in that sense too. Two
Mm.
people, two.
That is, yeah, that's amazing. It's funny how, like, talk about, like, even going back to what we were saying in the beginning, just certain things that are undeniable. There are things about whether it's like a person's name, and it's like, did this person just like live up to their name? Like, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but like someone who just has a very specific name and they just live it. Like, they just live the energy of their name, and it's like, I don't know. That's probably maybe not a good example, but like how you're saying, Colin, astrology wonder, and happens to be Gemini, happens to be a twin, like happens. It's just sort of like, is somebody playing a video game and we're part of it? Like, it's like a
Right.
matrix thing almost sometimes when you see
No.
synchronicities. All right, beautiful. Thank you. And then, so the other thing that I was thinking about, and was in Ayurveda, there are three types.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Now
can you
you
go into those three types and just a little bit about that?
absolutely. So the types, also known as the doshas, is probably what you're talking about. Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. is the three doshas. Essentially, each dosha is just a combination of two of the five elements. Again, our five elements are fire, water, air, ether, and earth. Um, Ayurvedic philosophy, Sankhya philosophy says that anything that's real, natural, non-artificial is made up of just five elements, the five elements of nature. So we are natural beings. We are made up of just the five elements. And we take them and we break them, or we create, not break them down, but we put them together to make the doshas. So vata is a combination of air and ether combined. Pitta is fire and water combined. And kapha is earth and water combined. So you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what do we do with that, right? We understand what we really care about and what we really dive into, and what makes Ayurveda is the qualities. We call them the gunas in Sanskrit. Okay, so the qualities of air and ether combined, it makes wind. Like how you beautifully already like prefaced and talked about air and wind. You walk outside, it's like you don't see it, but you know what it feels like against your skin. The qualities are cold, dry, rough, light, airy, of course, and also subtle. Okay. It represents our minds and our spirits. So that is how it shows up in us. It shows up in all the movement that we do, everything I'm doing with my hands, all the speech that I'm saying, the blinking of my eyes, all the movement in my body is subtle, right? And it's also represented by vata. The second dosha is pitta. It's fire and water, and it's the only dosha that has the fire element. So anytime we're thinking heat, transformation, or even inflammation in the body, we're going to think pitta. Okay. It rules, again, the transformation in our body. So our digestion, any type of chemistry, our hormones, anything we see through our eyes and transform into an idea, that is all through pitta. The last one is kapha. It's earth and water combined. You can say it makes mud, it makes clay, it makes gross matter, right? So it's our bodies, our muscles, our skin, our hair. It's cool liquids also because it has the water element, but it's the cooler liquids because there's no fire there. So it's our mucosals, it's our cerebral fluids, our joint fluid, it's all of the interstitial fluids, and also just everything that you can touch in your body. It's kapha.
Thank you for this overview, because when it comes to then people try to figure out what type they are and stuff, like, can we get into that a bit to, like, first of all, how can I identify my type, and then what do I do with that information?
So fun, right? People love an archetype. People love to be
Sure.
like, well, and it's great. It's so much of Ayurveda is asvadhyaya, as you may or may not know. It's a yogic term that is a self-study. It's like, how do I know myself? How do I know why I do the things I do? Like, why do I tick this way? Why do I want this way? So much of that is what Ayurveda does for us. It teaches us that. So understanding that we are all natural. So we all have the five elements in us. So if we all have the five elements in us, we all have the three doshas in us, right? And as I described them, we all have a mind and a spirit. We all have transformation. We all have the body. So we all have them. So you can identify certain things with them. But when someone says, what's my dosha? Or a better way to say it is, what's my constitution? Essentially, it's what's my predominant dosha? Okay. Which one shows up a little bit more predominant or prevalent? And that is what we would call, the Sanskrit word is your prakriti. That never changes. That was created at conception by nature. Okay. You will show those characteristics of those doshas and those qualities, essentially qualities rather than characteristics. So like a vata person, they're lighter and airier. They're much more cerebral and also very spiritual. They're creative. They're innovative. They can think outside of the box. They make very good speakers and they can captivate an audience with their voice. And they're very good at, they can be really good CEOs because they can think of ideas and strategize down into like the future. They're also just lighter in their bodies. Okay. And they also are drier in their bodies. A person that has a lot of vata in them, you'll see like the definition in their bones and their muscles, not because they have like a really good workout going on. It's most likely because they can't hold water. They can't hold moisture. And so there's a lot of like sunken in dryness to them. A pitta person is very fiery. Okay. They have a lot of drive, ambition. They have a lot of that fire quality. There are athletes, our our bodybuilders, our military folks, people that are very, I would say, logical. They set a goal and they get it. They're very much like, this is my goal. I'm going to go get it. They're the executors. It's that CEO Vata that gives them the idea, and then they put it to earth. They put it to the ground and get it done. And it shows up in their their demeanors. They're intense. They have intense eyes. They have a lot of times very light eyes because there's a intensity, and there's a fieriness, a brightness to their eyes. They're also just bright people because of the fire. A kapha person is earthy. They're grounded. They are like the mountains of the Berkshires. When the wind blows and life blows at them, they don't blow away. They are stable and they are there. They're the ones that give the best hugs. They are the ones that can hold space. They're the ones that when you come to them with something, they don't run away and say, I'll be right back and never come back, or I'll call you back. And they will sit with you. They'll hear it because they can. They have the capacity to hold. And they're the ones that'll check up on you. Text me when you get home, or, I call them the healers. They're the maternal, the paternal people, the therapists, the ones that can really be in touch with their emotions as well. So someone says, how do I find out what I truly am? Sitting with for a consultation, it's not just I think I'm this, I'm going to take a little dosha quiz and I must be this. It gets deeper than that, because this is what you are at your baseline. This is what your prakriti, your constitution is what you are at your baseline. But then life happens, and then imbalances happen, and you might be manifesting as a vata when you're actually a pitta, or you might be acting like a kapha, but you're actually at your baseline of vata, pitta, or something else. So some of us practitioners, some of the even doctors I've studied under, they're still trying to discover their prakriti. They're still learning themselves of who they truly are.
That's beautiful.
So yeah. It goes into depth, in quite the depth.
Yeah, I appreciate this. There are so many things too that I want to reflect on that. And I appreciate how you mentioned that the people who are doing the work are people who are very involved that are still figuring themselves out. They're still always in process. Maybe a short version of saying that is, we talk about healing, or like a person's healed or something, or how, and I just think it's a process. It's a verb. Like, we are not a fixed point. We are a verb. Like, we're always in motion. Am I using that correctly? I love English writing. I'm not always up on my verbs and adjectives, whatever. But yeah, like, we are a verb. We're in process always. So that's really cool to point that out. That and also because me personally, I'm very like anti-guru and anti anyone knows. Like, I very much I love how Bruce Lee was always, from what I've ever read about him or anything or learned about him, he was always very humble to say, sharing anecdotally, sharing from experience, but it's your journey, right? So I love people that are always in process, is my point. So I appreciate you sharing that, that even very knowledgeable people are always very much in process.
Yeah, and the way I tell folks that too, because we are nature, and nature is not static; it's dynamic. It's constant flux and flow, right?
Yeah.
And as are we. So that's the way I look at it too. And also your comment about a guru. I too have not looked for a guru. They say when you do need a guru, the guru comes to you. But I'm also a firm believer that there's a Sanskrit phrase or a mantra, Om Namo Gurudev Namo, which is I bow to and I honor the guru within me. Right? So much of it is I'm the one that knows myself the best. I'm the one that knows, and it's an uncovering, it's unlearning or learning as well.
Yeah,
about ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I had this it's just bringing to mind, I had this mentor back. I was in New York, living in the city full time and just tunnel vision on my acting career and everything. And I had this, looking back, he was a mentor. He was a very strong, supportive mentor. And he said to me, John, you're really good at seeking out mentors. And I don't think he was even referring to himself in that context. He was talking about like all these different people that I would learn from and work with. So, I'm so about learning from lineages, learning from others. But it's that positioning of the individual. When someone positions themselves as a guru, I automatically am like, nope, get me out of here. or like even if it's like a felt like I get a whiff of that, I'm like, oh, whoa, whoa, get me out of here. Because I've found the most brilliant people that I've connected to, at least in my life, or responded to, anybody from the philosopher Krishnamurti, for instance, or I mentioned like Bruce Lee, have a sense of lightness about themselves and like know that they are very imperfect. They just kind of share what they're learning along the way. And that's the vibe, I think is always good to look out for. At least in my, experience, that's always been nice.
It's interesting you say that. Just one comment on that.
Yeah.
Talking about qualities and such. In Ayurveda, there's, the word guru. The Sanskrit word for guru means heavy. So it's interesting because when you do think of a guru, or the way I think of a guru is someone who's heavier in knowledge than you. So they have more of the depth or the weight of the knowledge, and they are the sharing it with you. So I will look for gurus in that way. It's like, oh, Dr. Robert Svoboda, Dr. Claudia Welch, they're heavier in this wisdom that they can share.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I love
it
that.
comes in different ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's also too, because it's a perfect example of how language can get, lost in translation, quite literally. Or just even the context of a word. Because to me, I hear the word guru and it has these connotations from things that were not helpful. But when you get to the root, like you're sharing of what it actually is and what it actually means, I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. So it's like you can wash it of its imprints of context that have come from other places, which makes me think of the other thing I want to reflect on, which is it's so interesting how you say these three essential qualities, or what was the word?
Doshas.
The doshas, and there was
Yeah.
a word with a C, I think, constitution.
Yes.
Right? So these three essential things, and that maybe at our core we were born primarily vata or something, but then life started to do stuff to us and we became more pitta, even though it's not necessarily in our nature, but based on the like the languaging I use with breath work is the imprints of stress in whatever form it arrives, right? So that could include anything from traffic up to like really, intense things. So I think of how drawing a parallel between those aspects are that with breath work, I think of the breath as sweeping through and finding these areas where stress has left imprints on us. And that the breath, again, very metaphorically speaking, can kind of sweep through and it could find those imprints and shift and rearrange that energy and potentially metabolize and catalyze it so we don't have to carry the imprint anymore. Because the imprints can start to, in essence, block the flow of our inborn radiance, right? Like if we think of ourselves, I know that nadi is like channels, like NADI is channels. So if we think of these imprints as disrupting our flow of our natural radiance, our channels, and these imprints start to create this story around who we are, who we've been told to be through cultural conditioning or these stress imprints, trauma, right? You name it. But that we can clear that space with breath through understanding of Ayurveda. It sounds like that's where I'm drawing the parallel here, that we clear the narrative that isn't inherent to who we actually are, our soul, our natural radiance. And so it's interesting that how that can affect or manifest itself in the way that like our kind of constitution, as you're saying. And it's like, oh, how can we come back to our core radiance and then align from there?
Yes, beautiful. That's a really fascinating way to look at things. I'm like, whoa, with Ayurveda, we look for the root of the issue, any imbalance, right? We believe that health is balance. It's that simple. It's nothing complicated. It's not something that's, one size fits all. It's what's balanced. Mother Nature's balanced at different times. Like, what do you, it all depends. What do you consider, is a snowstorm balanced a bad thing or is it a good thing? Is a rainstorm a good thing? It depends. It really depends on where Mother Nature is with the flux and the flow and the dynamic, way that she is. But when we go to the root of things, that is where, where we can find it. And it's sometimes it is the mind. Sometimes it is the lack of breath. Sometimes, there's such, in Ayurveda, we look for the mind, the body, and the spirit. We look to see where the imbalance is. So kind of similar to what you're saying, so that you can allow the prana or the chi to flow, right? And I love how you said it through the radiance, so that they can actually show up as who they truly are. People can show up as who they truly are and their soul can shine through.
Yeah. Yeah, because you hear like how one way I've heard it said is authenticity is the highest vibration, right? It's not about being perfect. It's not about getting everything right. It's about being authentic is what is like, whoa, like you know it when you feel it. And that's that sense of internal radiance is around, because even going back to the stuff with acting, I remember that was how I made my living, and it's a really tricky way to make a living in some cases. And still to this day, I don't know if it's because I was any good at it or it was just through sheer force of will. But like one of the things I learned along the way that I thought was really interesting was it was something someone was talking about in the context of being an actor, but probably more generally in context of being an artist or a creative person. But I think also just in the context of being a human in general, is like, when is it appropriate for self-improvement and when is it appropriate for self-acceptance?
Mm.
Right? Like, where is something that you maybe identify that you're like, I don't like that, I'm going to change it? Versus when is it something that you identify, because any quality, it sounds like, tying this again to Ayurveda, any quality probably has, you could say, the bright side and the shadow side, right? I'm super outgoing, which is great, but maybe I never take time for myself to reflect, to pause and reflect, and to be in or something, like, for instance, right? Or, I'm a lot of this, which has this great quality, but then it has this downside. It's this balance that you're talking about too, and nature and everything else. Let me tie it together with this. For instance, I once had a massage therapist tell me that I had a lot of wind energy, which I'm guessing is maybe Vata kind of vibe, if you speak in the right. And
Yep, you
so
got it.
the question goes to the question in terms of how I'm trying to frame this is it okay, so what happens if I just accept and lean into that wind energy? Maybe I end up doing these things, like you said, like speaking and like different things, right? Versus do I say, oh, I'm talking too much, I'm such an idiot, I should ground myself more, I should be more kapha, more earth energy, I should sit down and shut up, I should blah blah blah, right? Like, you get that internal critic that could try to push down the wind, the air, rather than embrace it and see where that goes. Like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of the balance?
That's so cool. You led right into like my favorite thing to talk about, which is essentially duality, right? And you said the word authenticity. Yes, that's like kind of the goal we're trying to get to. And it is a practice, it is a progress, it's a constant motion of like, who am I at my truest self? Like, those are the big questions we ask at places like Kripalu, like, who am I? What am I here to do? What is my purpose? And as soon as like you find that, I truly believe is like it will start feeling right. It will not feel like running up against a wall. It will feel in flow. It will feel natural. And, call it authenticity or also call it wholeness. And the wholeness comes with both sides, whether it's the shadow and the light, the masculine, the feminine. It's another thing that I'm really fascinated with is this duality. And speaking of, I call it Taoism or Tantra, which is, the Vedic way of saying it. And seeing, you know, I think the question we have to ask ourselves with is like, how does it feel? Like, do I feel good speaking a lot? Or does it not feel authentic? Or like, do I speak a lot and then I know that I need to balance it? Ayurveda would say, never push anything, into extreme. Extremes is never where we want to be. So it's like, oh, I'll do that. But then I also have to know how to balance it. And, you'll catch yourself. And that's how you kind of also understand your constitution. Like, I catch myself doing this a lot into an extreme because I like it, because it makes me feel good, but also knowing that you need to kind of come back to center with the opposites as well. And just having that knowledge of understanding what the opposites are. What's hot, what's cold, what's, light and what's grounding. Again, duality, something I'm extremely fascinated with. And whether it's the physical qualities, that Ayurveda speaks to a lot, or even the subtle qualities of, again, the masculine and feminine energies, the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, your creative side or your logical side, like that stuff. I think it's all part of understanding ourselves and learning who we are and why we're here and what we're doing here and how we serve in
Yeah.
purpose with a big P.
Yeah, that sense of how it feels,
Mm.
right? I love that. And it's so and it's funny because I mean, I don't know what other people's perspective on me or how I talk or think might be, but I could say this much. I know that if I ever feel confused or overwhelmed, I try very hard to get logical and pragmatic, almost as like a defense mechanism. Like, so that's kind of the shadow side of it. I kind of try to but I say that because I think I'm generally try inclined towards how do I take concepts that seem like they're just out there floating and just like place them on the ground to be like, how does this actually make sense? What do I do with it? So I'm saying, like, as much as some people might think things are ethereal or kind of woo-woo or something, I find it very fascinating to find things that seem maybe ethereal or woo-woo, but find how they are so pragmatic and actually, like implementable, like everything we're talking about. And so I'm thinking about how, for instance, um, how it feels might sound like a kind of a woo-woo concept. It's like, oh, okay, how it feels, okay. But it's like, right, but because you can't say talking a lot is good, talking a little is bad, or talking a little is good, talking a lot is bad. You can't say that. It depends on the flow you're in, like how it feels while it's happening. Maybe talking a lot right now feels good because it's time to be talking a lot. Whereas you, the same person, 20 minutes later, may be talking a lot and being like, hey, it's time to shut up now. Right? It's like it's actually just like you're saying, getting to know yourself puts you in the sense of, is this the season I'm in? Going back to everything we were talking about before, is this the season I'm in? And that's the alignment. That's what makes me think about the Tao, like the Tao Te Ching, like referencing some of the things you were talking about before too. And the other thing about that, the one other thing is, in terms of a pragmatic thing, I was thinking about the concept of exercise, right? And how it's so interesting how people would be like, yoga's good for you, or like running's bad for you. Like, I've seen this, you see this stuff on the internet when it's just like too much information. People start arguing about, like, not even, they're like talking about, the surface level of the same thing. They're like talking about running, but they're not talking about, well, how are you running? What is your relationship to yourself while you're running? And then they'll try to say distance running is good or bad, or like running sprints is good or bad, like these things. And it's like, what is your relationship to what you're doing? It's not the thing itself in most cases, right? Like, if you're talking about like doing hardcore drugs or something, like, okay, that's a problem. But like when it comes to other like things more, straight ahead, like exercise, it's like exercise can, even yoga can be quote unquote not good for you if you're approaching it either at the wrong time, right? You're exhausted and you really just need some 8 hours of sleep, or like whether you're approaching it in a way that isn't aligned. What is the Yoga Sutra thing? Abide and ease. There's like this sense of abide and ease, which just like the Tao Te Ching, I don't think it means resignation or giving up. It means be in the flow of the season you're in, basically. And anyways, there's probably way too much I could. This is those moments where I'm like, okay, I can stop talking now. But you know what I mean? It's like, I'm just tying it to these things that we do every day, that all of us do every day around eating. Eating seasonally, I'm sure, is a probably big one, right? We could talk about that a bit. So it's like people be like, eating meat is bad for you. Period. End of sentence. And I'm like, I don't know. I was vegan for 5 years, and I'm not trying to make any statements on here. This is my point. I think there are times in the seasons, in the whatever is going on with your body, there's times to, let's just put it this way, there are times to eat heavier and there are times to eat lighter. There's probably times to eat a lot and times to even maybe fast for certain periods of time, like, whether it's a little or a lot, depending on what's going on. Um, is there anything in there that you want?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not so much as movement, or I don't even call it exercise. I call it movement with my clients. I talk more about food. Everyone comes to me and says, Kaveri, tell me what to eat. And I joke and I say, you want me to tell you what to eat? And they're like, wait, isn't that what you do? I'm like, ah, eating is such an intimate thing. Like, I'm not in your kitchen with you. Like, I'm not seeing you if you're like, snacking on the road or whatever. That, and also, no one is one size fits all. So for everyone to have what I like to kind of tease the fad diets, when we can name thousands of them, probably, the no fat, the keto, the South Beach, all of the diets, it's so strange how they've umbrellaed those as everyone should be doing these fad diets when every single person, according to Ayurveda, is divinely unique. Yes, we all have the five elements, but we are our combination of the doshas and the way we are and where we live and what type of work we do. Everything is a factor. Everything has a quality, and something can balance you or something can push you into an extreme. So it's something that I'm always constantly working on with clients to understand that it takes some time to really get to know yourself, the awareness is the first thing. And yes, we can say feel. The word feel is very woo, but it's so much of Ayurveda. This information was I could say downloaded, or it was given to the rishis and sages as they sat in meditation 5,000 plus years ago in India. The information was given to them, the wisdom was given to them, and they didn't stop just there and say, "Hey, everyone, do this." They sat and they trial and errored it. They tested it. They watched the plants and the animals and themselves and the bodies and their villages and the people, and they watched how eating one thing would do this thing, moving this way would do that thing. So much of it again is this self-study and this svadhyaya, but also trial and error with yourself. Try the veganism for 5 years, see how it goes. I could tell you veganism probably wouldn't be good for you. And that's something we could talk about offline, but like just understanding your constitution already, and some people it's try it out. And the thing is to actually witness it and see how it feels in the body physically. How does your digestion feel? How does your skin feel? Is it making you flush? Is it making you nauseous? And making the decision, which is another very cool. I love this word in Sanskrit. It's called pragnya prad, which means crime against wisdom. And eating the food or doing the action or doing something and seeing, did this make me feel good or did it not make me feel good? And if it didn't make you feel good, don't go do it again. Like that is crime against wisdom. Your body is talking to you. I truly believe that our bodies are always speaking to us, whether it's as simple as your stomach is growling, telling you you're hungry, or something is showing up on your skin to make it very obvious, whether it's acne or rosacea, like something's going on. Body's always talking to you. And so much of Ayurveda teaches you to listen to it again, and then you make your decisions according to that. Again, it's such an intimate thing. It's something that happens with just you, not the person who's sharing the wisdom with you. It's you.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I think sometimes that maybe the body whispers before it screams, kind of thing. All to your
Yes.
point, and I appreciate you. Like I deeply appreciate you taking these ancient concepts and just rooting them in just pure, again, just kind of going back to the rooting things in practicality, just like, okay, here's where it comes from and here's what it means, right? And also I appreciate very much, and I would love to talk about this in any way that's interesting to you, is that you have the Sanskrit words, that you have, you said South Asian lineage yourself.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I'd be remiss, like this is just occurring to me now, which is, I mean, maybe shows my ignorance, but I'm just like, so what is it, this is probably just a huge question, but what is it like watching people maybe confuse Sanskrit translations? Or like I recently saw one about how people say namaste at the end of class, but they should be saying it at the beginning because it means basically hello or something. Like, is that right? And I heard that
Big one. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a huge one. Thank you for asking that. And,
Yeah.
so much of this journey for me in Ayurveda was just a journey back home to myself, right?
Mhm.
And not only understanding myself on this deep, deep level, but a journey in so many different ways, a journey back to myself, to my roots, being born in India, born in Mumbai, but I say brought to this country at two. I didn't move here. I was brought to this country at 2 years old and being so disconnected from something that is literally who I am and not understanding so many things and having to do the work to actually make the trips to go back there, have the conversations with family that are still alive that can answer the questions um and also having a little bit of activism when it comes to this is how my ancestors did things and it is rich and it is beautiful and it is wise and don't come in here with any type of go there like colonial behavior of taking something that is not yours, flipping it the opposite way, and then calling it yours. And very much so, your example of saying namaste at the end of classes of all these yoga classes in the West, it's so cringy. It's so yeah. I go to India and you think anyone's gonna say namaste to you at the end when they leave? No, no. It's literally, you say it everywhere when you say hello to someone. It is a greeting. It is a salutation. Yes, the Sanskrit word, Sanskrit words have such vibration and such potent meaning to them that some of them have multiple meanings to it. Yes, it is the light in me sees the light in you. But when we in India, it's such a rich culture, which that is how they say hello. The light in me sees the light of you in you. It doesn't have to be something that you say at the end of a yoga class. It's just that is how we greet each other. That is how our souls see each other. We look at each other. It's also like a hygiene thing. Like instead of shaking someone's hand, you just have to do this. When I see my clients, it's one of these. I don't know. Did they wash their hands today? We're not spraying germs. Then there's just one of these, and that means namaste. Hello, salutations, greetings. And yeah, it does get a little frustrating, and I share it with love as much as I can. I don't think, when it comes to activism, I truly believe like you got to share with love. No one wants to be called out. No one wants to feel shame or guilty about it. You do everything that's a hard conversation. You always come with love when you say it. So I try to do my best with that. Yes, there's some very cringy moments. Um, and I pause and I say, like, how do I say this to them in love, with love, or do I say anything at all, um, and is this a personal thing because of it's part of my journey, which is my own work, and do they need to hear this from me, or is this something that I just need to hold in my heart?
Beautiful.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I appreciate that. I was just so curious because I thought, I've taught some yoga. Obviously, I got breathwork. That's my job. That's my vocation. That's everything. And so, but I teach some yoga, and all along the way, I noticed that even over all the years with breathwork and everything else and pranayama, like I'll say what I know, certain things, like if something comes up, but all suffice it to say that I've always kind of like I wasn't sure if I was just being lazy by not learning the Sanskrit stuff things, but I was like, am I just being lazy by not like studying with flashcards like the Sanskrit and stuff? Because I want to honor lineage, but I feel like, at least for me personally, I'm definitely just speaking for myself because I appreciate so much what you said about activism, like just coming from love, because I feel like a lot of what a lot of people do is they're trying to honor something, and they might just have different ways of doing that. You see this a lot with Native American culture, for sure. You see a lot of that, which it's like, okay, is this honoring the lineage or is this cultural appropriation? Like, what are we? So I just, at first I thought, well, I don't know how much or little I should be doing with Sanskrit, because how much is honoring the lineage, and I'm just being lazy by not learning these translations of this other language. But I really sat with that and was like, well, no, I just inherently feel more comfortable speaking from my personal experience and my language that I was brought up with. And so, like, if I want to say something like, for instance, at the end of a lot of my sessions, I'll say victory to the light within. I know what that means in English because that's the only language I really know and the one I was brought up with. And so I just say that because there's probably versions of that you can translate into Sanskrit. And I would love to honor that lineage, because so much of what I'm doing with breath work, and then certainly when I do certain aspects of yoga class or incorporate aspects of yoga into my breathwork sessions, there's this lineage, like just this lineage I want to honor. But I feel like in some ways the best way to honor it is just to be myself and take what I do know from my own personal experience, and then not try to, I don't know, but everybody's got a version of that, and everybody's on their own journey. But of course, I was like, well, I gotta ask this. I'm curious because it's the yoga in whatever. Last thing I'll say about it is just, it's also interesting how being trained at Kripalu and in the Kripalu lineage versus then you go to yoga classes in other places sometimes, and it's more like just a straight up exercise class. And that's awesome. That's great. But I don't know where the word yoga fits or doesn't fit. Also, how the word yoga doesn't even necessarily mean doing postures in the first place, you know? So it's like, it's just layers upon layers. And so, anyways, I was just so curious your perspective and what you've come along the way. And so I appreciate you sharing these things.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge topic, right? And there's certain things that um again, feel okay and some certain things don't. When people do the work of actually giving the reverence and giving the respect, say whatever you want, like say whatever feels what's comfortable for you without butchering it or without not giving the respect where the respect is due, and some people didn't do the work. They didn't do the research of knowing where it comes from. And that it's pretty obvious for us South Asians when they have and haven't and um when the respect is there and the respect is not there. That's what I'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, beautiful. And then just one more time, appreciating how you said that when it's, trying to come from love when it comes to these things, because it's also you see that a lot with drawing a bridge without diving into it, but just drawing a bridge even to just how things get politicized sometimes, and how I think in some ways a tragedy of not coming at something with love is that so often in certain capacity, I'm speaking very vaguely right now, but sometimes we end up eating our own, so to speak. Like people who just want to love each other, love others, and honor lineages sometimes get, you know, yelled at or can't, and sometimes for very understandable reasons why people might be upset, but intention has to matter, I think, right? Like again, I'm trying to be, I don't want to say things like I know, because there are so many things I don't know. Without a doubt, there are so many things I don't know. But I do think intention does have to matter to a certain degree. Of course, there's like different aspects to all this, but yeah, like when someone's coming at something from love and they're trying to honor something, it's like, okay, just seeing that for what it is, versus, because otherwise we end up like screaming at each other over here when over there's a whole other thing going on that we should be a lot more concerned about, that kind of thing.
I love that you speak to intention. That's probably one of my biggest mottos too. I can always sense someone's intention. And if,
Mm.
something comes out of their mouth that just doesn't sound right, it's either say something or not say something, let it go or not let it go. If their intention is there, if it's golden, if it's positive, if it's with love, people are doing their best, right? They're doing their
Yeah.
best.
Beautiful. And so, before we go here, because I appreciate everything you're sharing and your time and all your insight on these things, what do you have going on at Kripalu? Do you have like what's going on, what's coming up, what are you working on? Just share, whatever.
Uh,
Yeah.
so what am I currently doing? So I'm seeing clients in the healing arts. I like to see them in person. I also like to see them remotely because I am a little bit transit. I live here in the Hudson Valley near the Berkshires, and I also live in downtown Boston. So I like to, like, my one-on-one clients, that is my dharma. That is my purpose. Like, I love counseling. I love sitting with someone and just creating this beautiful picture and putting the puzzle pieces together for them to understand themselves, sharing the wisdom so that they know who they are. So I'm doing that in person. I do it again remotely. I also do it in Boston at Down Under Yoga. I see clients there. I also help out with their Foundation So Ayurveda program. I'm a coach for their students. I am doing workshops on the Kripalu Online Studio. So I do Ayurveda hour with Kaveri, and then I do an Ayurveda hour just Q&A because I never have enough time to answer all the questions. But this is actually turning this Q&A, it's turning into a small group and almost like a small little sangha of people that are fascinated with Ayurveda just as I am. They like to geek out on it and they come and ask the questions and we talk about things that, that help. But also recently, as this past month has gone by, and again, losing another family member and just being so immersed in the topic of grief, which is something that is literally close to my heart. Losing my mother, losing my dog, losing my cousin who was like a brother to me, all in the month of November, and also more of chronic grief of the reason I came to Ayurveda, which is not being able to conceive a child and be a mother. That's something that I've been navigating for many years, and it does something to someone, and it creates something in a person. Grief creates a space in a person, is what I've learned, and I'm also fascinated in turning pain into purpose, and pain, specifically grief, because I believe that is truly just love that has nowhere to go. All of that stuff fascinates me. So those are what I getting called for. And usually when I get the calling and I follow it, it's usually the right way to go. So those are the two things that I'm working on. That's what I'm doing, counseling, workshops, and such, and then trying to see what the next step is on how I can better serve my community and those around and better heal and help
Awesome.
those around.
That's beautiful. And so well said. Grief is love without a place to go.
Mm,
That's did I
mm.
get that right?
You did.
Oh
Yeah.
God, that hit. Wow.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your humanity. And it's just a pleasure to work with you and to know you and everything. I just appreciate you very much. And
Likewise, John. This was a pleasure and an honor. And I also, with your work that you do, like it's such an honor as you're seeing you on campus and saying, I need to come to one of your workshops. I know it's somatic breath, and I just learning the technique from you was a game changer. Just never have done it before, didn't even know what to expect. Nobody even Googled it or YouTube it. And I was, I'm going to John's class, learn the technique. And I think a few months later, I attended a retreat that I taught yoga at, but I was also there as a participant. And that breath work was used. And I had such a profound experience with it, where the things that left my body, and God, whether like the wails and the crying and the convulsions of my solar plexus, were something I've never expected to ever feel or happen to me. And I wouldn't have been able to drop into that breath work at that moment at the retreat as deeply as I did if I hadn't come to your workshop and just learned the technique. So I'll always remember that. And I was like, I think I've told you that before, but I'm like, oh, I got to give him his credit of where the credit is due for that. So it was a big deal.
yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And definitely, I'm glad that the breathwork resonated with you, and because that's why I even like shifted my life to start guiding it, because it was just too much of an impact. That I'm sure you feel similar about the things that you teach and share with clients and everything, is like very often it's the thing that made such a difference in your life that you're just like, okay, this doesn't have to resonate with everybody, but the people it resonates for, I want to be part of making this amplified. And so important about what you're saying is that there's a degree of just becoming comfortable with what the thing is, so that when the time presents itself where your mind, your body is ready to just let go. So it's nice to have, that's why, sometimes different people have different ways of doing it, but it's worth and very important, not just worth it, but very important to take the time to contextualize what's going on if it's someone's first time, especially because the part of your brain that's trying to be like, okay, so what's going on here, or what should I anticipate, or what might come up? There's we're constantly scanning our environment to make sure we're safe. And so the more you have a context for what's going on and what the thing is, the more safe, deep down safe you can feel. And that's what makes the work powerful. It's not from, the top layer is from breathing essentially deeper and faster, you could say. But what the transformation really is that is a key that opens the door, and it's the degree of core safety that you feel to let yourself have an experience. That's where the healing and the transformation really goes on. And so yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. The way I felt after that, like the people that were in review were like, "You're a whole other person," and it was true. Like
Mm,
like there was so much that I needed to release, and I never knew how to release it, and
mm.
it still blows my mind.
Yeah, that's amazing because it's I use this Einstein quote a lot. It's we can't solve a problem from the same level of thinking that created it. And there's such a substantial, I said this yesterday when I was at Kripalu at the end of one of the sessions I guided, and I was like, it's almost like if you've been walking into the same brick wall over and over again, being like, how am I supposed to, there's a fucking brick wall right in front of my face. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And then the breath is like someone handing you a ladder. And you're like, oh, I can just up and over. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Great way to say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like you're spending your whole life at this brick wall and you can't climb it. You can't, what, you're just like, what do I do? What do I do? And all of a sudden someone's like, ladder. And you're like, oh, it's just that shift in perspective sometimes, or it gives you access to something in your body. You're mentioning solar plexus, right? And that's what I love about it so much, is that, when other things hit a wall, it's like, okay, well, in this context, your only job is to breathe. And when the body, the mind, the soul, the heart is ready, that shift just goes boop. And things, I'm one who's very dedicated to the idea of practice and that things take time and a degree of commitment in different things. And then also there are other things that once you shift that perspective, everything changes, potentially in an instant.
Yeah.
And so it's, all the above. So that's cool.
Oh, yeah, and it's beautiful that people that are trying to do the work, we're trying to do the work, we're trying to heal. And you're right. If it's a wall, you're like, I'm really trying, but this wall just won't move. And to have a different modality, such as breath work, something that you've never tried before, that is built and created to help you with that ladder. Oh God, it's so healing. I can get emotional about that too, because it's like people are begging for something to help them. And when you find it,
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Mindfulness Unscripted, in-person events, Zoom sessions, and more at jonorsini.com. Victory to the light within.